Here we go. Awesome. Hey, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We are so excited to have y'all here. This is going to be an amazing session. I'm excited. I'm excited for what the future of this session is going to look like. As we are getting started, if you wouldn't mind opening up that chat bar and turning your chat to everyone, not just hosts and panelists or just panelists or whatever it's going to look like, and tell us where you're coming from. We want to know who you are, where you're coming from. I'm coming from sunny Lubbock, Texas. Woohoo! We've got Caitlin from Parkton. Brittany, I better see you in Scottsdale in 2 weeks for that happy hour that we're hosting down there. So better see you there. Good. Also, yeah, we got some folks from Seattle, Vancouver. Very exciting. So happy to have you here. Camela, you're coming from sunny Seattle, snowy Seattle.
It is sunny today.
There we go.
There are a few clouds because it is Seattle, but it's gorgeous.
Hey, we love that. I honestly, I feel like I need to actually go visit Seattle because when I think of it, I think of Grey's Anatomy and just like constant rain and drama. So I feel like that's a really bad representation of what Seattle is.
Yeah, I would say visit between July 5th, because it always rains on the 4th, and September 21st. If you're in that window, it's gorgeous.
There we go. Eli, so great to see another Red Raider here. I don't know about y'all. I'm excited for the Super Bowl. See our boy Patrick Mahomes coming out and hopefully winning this year. So that's gonna be an awesome time. Are you gonna watch the Super Bowl, Camela?
Yes.
Are you a football person?
I am a football person.
Oh,
I'm a Seattle fan.
Oh.
My husband is a Broncos fan.
Oh.
And that was really awkward a couple Super Bowls ago. So
I was about to say.
We stopped rubbing it in because it was so bad. It was so bad. We stopped rubbing it in. And everybody the next day was like, "Are you okay?" to my husband.
I love that. I mean, that's what marriage is for. All the fun little pokes and jabs like that, right? It's a healthy marriage when we do that. Okay, so as folks are coming in, we'll give it another minute before we kick off, but I want to start off with a little housekeeping. Make sure that your chat is turned to everyone, not just panelists and attendees. I'm very proud of myself. I think this is the first time in 2 years that I've actually said that and done it at the same time. Normally I'll tell people to do it and then I'll just keep messaging the panelists and attendees. And so that's wildly embarrassing. So make sure it's turned to everyone. We want this to be as impactful and valuable as possible for y'all. Camela has some really great material. I am incredibly excited. I know I'm going to learn a lot, but I also know that there's probably going to be a lot of questions. So if at any point in time you have a question, you can either drop it into the chat, or if you take your mouse, look at the bottom bar, there's a little Q&A box and you can post questions anonymously if you're more comfortable with that. Whatever format fits you. You can also Slack me in the community Slack if that works for you. Whatever you need, we'll get those questions answered, but please don't hesitate to ask them. If it's super technical, super vague, whatever it's going to be, I'm sure Camela's got some great insights into what that's going to look like. So with that,
I just want to set some expectations up front. This is a huge topic and we cannot cover every aspect, and every business needs to report different metrics. So this is a starting point. If it's useful, tell Katie Ray, because then we can do more of these in more detail and cover other areas. And maybe we can even do some best practice reporting on digital analytics specifically.
Oh yeah, I'm
a little excited.
we were just slacking before this. And we're like, ooh, can we do? And I was like, Camela, whatever you want to do. You are so brilliant. Absolutely. So yeah, if you, and once again, I'll go over in the end some feedback stuff. So stay tuned for that. But yeah, make sure your chat's turned to everyone. Make sure that you know where the Q&A box is. If you need specific instructions on how to find it, just DM me in the chat or on Slack, let me know. And yeah, drop your questions whenever. I'll be interrupting Camela throughout the conversation with your guys' questions. So, okay, I'm going to go on mute, and Camela, I'll let you take over.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and minimize this and start going. So before I go into what we're going to learn, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. So I'm the VP of Marketing at CaliberMind, but before I was the VP of Marketing, I spent about 15 years in revenue operations supporting executives in B2B tech. And a big part of this support was actually preparing board decks for those people and preparing them to speak to the different data points I thought that the board would ask questions about. So a lot of experience with this, and I've been in a boardroom. I'm actually going to be in a boardroom presenting tomorrow, and it's not a new thing. So that's why you should listen. You may hear, speaking of listening, Annie the Rage Bunny. She's on the left. She is on Squirrel Patrol. And then Kevin is the silent partner. And because I'm getting ready to travel to Denver for a board meeting, he instituted a travel ban that unfortunately I'm ignoring. So here's what we're going to learn today. We're going to really focus on reading charts. In future sessions, if this is useful, I want to talk more specifically about how to tell stories with data, how to present to different audiences. So whether you're venture-backed, private equity, and what stage you are, all of those factors make what you're going to contain in your deck very specific. What I do want to say is you're going to notice that these are very high-level metrics. Usually we're focused on bookings pipeline, lead volume, and a few other core areas. And if you're more advanced or a private equity company, you're going to be looking at lifetime contract value, retention, and a few other things. The reason why it's high level is these executives normally have about 20 minutes to present. And while they will go to you to ask about the initiatives, a best practice is not to change what you're reporting on every quarter. The reason why we don't change every quarter is because it gives the impression that we're trying to hide something, because every other department consistently reports on the same metrics. So if you take one thing away from this meeting, it's to be consistent and not focus on initiatives only. So what we're going to do in this chart reading session, we're going to learn why certain executives have this weird superpower where they can spot things and ask the hard questions. The reason why we're going to focus on that is the key to having a good board presentation is anticipating those questions and preparing ahead of time. And I promise you don't need to be good at math. We're going to be using a skill called pattern matching, and you start that in infancy. So it's like how you learn to recognize your parents' faces, or if you're at the grocery store and you're out of your favorite brand of peanut butter, it's how we learn how to find a suitable substitute. So we're not using math and numbers. We're looking for patterns, and then we're learning what questions to ask next. So I'm going to peek at the chat really quickly just to make sure we don't have any questions, and then we'll move on. So this is why it matters to you specifically. I'm going to share some horror stories, but first I want to set the expectation of what the board is trying to achieve and what you're trying to achieve as a department leader. So the board is really trying to determine whether or not the company is on track to hit whatever goal it is. So typically for private equity, that's to make you as profitable as possible and increase those profit margins and prepare you for a sale in the future. That's not always the case. I've seen a lot of private equity take smaller shares in profitable companies and have them continue for long periods operating independently. But in general, that's the approach. And venture-backed, they're focused on scaling as quickly as possible because the ultimate goal is hopefully becoming public. So what they're trying to do is figuring out if the company is on the right trajectory, and they want to know if they can spot good things that they can encourage the executive team to repeat, and bad things they can encourage the executive team to avoid. And that's how you need to think when you're presenting to the board. What is my overall performance? What's the good? What's the bad? And how can I anticipate the questions they're going to ask? So your job as department head is to prove you can identify the bad stuff to avoid and repeat the good stuff. And your goal is to retain or even gain resources. Especially if you're in B2B SaaS right now, it's a tough market. You really need to be able to defend what you're doing. So what's in it for you? The reason why we need to focus on anticipating these questions is because you don't want egg on your face and to be surprised and scramble after the meeting to try to get the answers. It makes you look less competent as a leader. So anticipating questions ahead of time and preparing ahead will help you maintain respect across the business. And I think we've all witnessed that decline of respect in leadership teams that we've been on, and it's a rocky road that we don't want to walk down. And again, you don't have to be good at math. These things that we're talking about are pattern matching and things we all do on a daily basis. So, story time. Here's an example of the bad that I've seen. I was in a presentation. We had an executive who didn't ask questions ahead of time and wasn't sure about the context of the report. He saw that a report was trending up and to the right and assumed it was a good thing. Unfortunately, that chart was reporting churn. So up and to the right meant we were losing more and more customers, and they looked really bad when that came out. So default to asking questions ahead of time, know what you don't know, and be open about what you don't know with your operations and analyst teams. Okay, so becoming the slide sleuth. So in every meeting I've been in with an executive team, there's always that one executive, usually the CEO or the CFO, that can spot something and then ask a question and completely unnerve the person who's presenting. And it's not a superpower. They're spotting something unusual. So something is jumping out to them. They're seeing an anomaly in the pattern. They're seeing something trending down or some data that's missing, and they're curious about it. So this is the thing we're trying to build. It's not being psychic. We're trying to spot what looks weird on a chart and to dig at it before we ever present the data. And this will help you as a manager when you're dealing with an operations or analyst team, and all of us makes mistakes. If we can spot where gaps are or where things look weird ahead of time and question that, we're going to get in front of a data problem before we present something that isn't accurate. So again, the reason why they ask those hard questions that can be embarrassing, they want to know if there's something good happening, can we repeat it? If it's bad, can we avoid it? So the things we need to learn how to do in order to anticipate those questions is spot trends, see missing info, pick out strange patterns and be able to see if there's a pattern in that unusual activity, and then spot anomalies. And those are the things that are either really good or really bad out of nowhere that we need to dig into and figure out why that happened. So we're going to practice using the toolkit. Reading a chart, I promised you, there's no math. You don't need to understand the data. You need to see if there's a trend, and then you need to ask and make sure you understand the context. So trending up is you just stick a line on it. Is it going up and to the right? That's trending up. Trending down. And if it's lumpy and all over the place, we're still trying to draw a line in the middle of it to figure out where it's going. Again, do not assume, like the story I told you, that trending up is a good thing. We're just looking at the direction things are headed. So, obscure Portlandia reference. I'm from Seattle, so of course I had to reference something really obscure and pretty particular to my area. But every time I was looking at charts and thinking of how to explain this, I kept hearing "put a bird on it." It's a skit. You can look it up on YouTube. But basically, the trick to figuring out if it's trending up or trending down is trying to draw a line that's consistent with the direction of the chart. So again, don't assume a direction is good or bad. Context is everything. So that trending up was actually our federal budget deficit. So going up was actually a really bad thing. So this is just reinforcing. Make sure before you start talking about trending up as a good thing that you're taking the context into effect. So trending up and to the right means the budget deficit was widening, and that's actually a bad thing. So another trick to spotting patterns. So understand how your quarter is structured. So whenever I work with a company and I'm doing a little bit of consulting when it comes to their data, I ask if they're on a fiscal or calendar quarter. The reason why I ask this is there are certain patterns that are really normal to businesses at certain points in the funnel when it comes to quarters. So for example, if you have only a full cycle seller team and you don't have an inside sales team, you're probably going to notice a big dip in pipeline build in the third month of every quarter. And that's because when we're dealing with full cycle sellers, they are exclusively focused on closing deals and hitting their number and making enough earnings for their family in that third month of the quarter. So understanding the context can help us spot a trend. Another example of this that's really common, again, this is assuming a calendar year. It's really normal to see in bookings charts a spike in the third month. We call this the hockey stick in sales, where we're closing some business in month one and two, and in month 3 we have a huge spike. This is because our buyers are as smart as our sales team and they know they're on a quarterly cycle, and if you know when the quarter ends, you can negotiate for lower pricing. So typically those of us purchasing are smart enough to know that if we delay, we can usually get a better deal. Is this making sense so far? Just to check on the chat. Okay. So anomaly detection. This is another superpower that I really encourage you to use ahead of the board meeting, and that is spotting missing data. When I see this, so when things look like they're trending up and to the right overall, and I see a couple gaps in the data, I'm going to have my analyst or operations person check with the sales department to see if they're seeing the same numbers. So I just want to make sure we dig in and double check and verify that it's not a matter of weird filters or missing data. That's the first thing that somebody on the board's going to pick out, especially if other departments are reporting similar numbers. So I typically report on pipelines and bookings, and I need to make sure that that matches up with the sales and executive team. And then not only are we looking for overall trends, but we're looking to see if the trend changed. So this is a very obvious example. It's going to look lumpier than this. But some of us in SaaS noticed that things headed an opposite direction as of maybe as early as July. And it's really important to dig into that and figure out why there's less efficiency. And some of that can be market pressures. Some of that can be inefficiencies in the funnel being more exacerbated during a downturn. There's a lot of reasons, but being able to spot the trend ahead of time and flag it early makes you look really good in front of the board. If I think I was talking about in July, it looks like we're going to hit some sort of recession, and everybody was poo-pooing that because they weren't hearing it from anything else. And then the next board meeting, I didn't say I told you so, but I could have. So essentially, I'm going to recall us back to Sesame Street. Hopefully, I'm not the only one who watched that growing up, and even with kids later on. They had this game called One of These Things Is Not Like the Other. That's exactly what you're doing with spotting trends, anomalies, and other things in your charts. So we're looking for spikes, dips, patterns, and then we're pushing on those and asking our team to help fill in the blanks so we're prepared ahead of time for those questions that are going to come flying at us at the board meeting. So I'm going to give you a real world example. So this is pipeline by month, and we're seeing a gradual trend up and to the right. It's slowed down in the third quarter, so it's a bit flatter here, if not completely flat. And we know it's pipeline build by month. And we're seeing this dip in the third month of the quarter. So the things, I'm going to jump to some conclusions and then go push on this with the rest of the team to verify that this is indeed the case. The first thing I'm going to ask is, do we have any inside salespeople? If we don't have any inside salespeople, this pattern is very telling and consistent across organizations that just have full cycle sellers, and they're focused in the third month of the quarter on revenue acquisition or bookings acquisition. So as a marketer, marketing in this department, this is going to inform my strategy. I'm going to push to build an inside sales team to flatten out that pipeline growth and get that more consistent month over month. Inside sales resources, it's a great way to ensure that lead follow-up is happening consistently across the quarter. Another thing I'm probably going to push on is whether or not, like, if the board or the executive team decides not to greenlight an inside sales team right now, is there an option for outsourcing? Is there an option to front load the quarter with leads and maybe shift budget allocation to earlier in the month or in the quarter with digital, and then change it later? So what I'm doing is I'm illustrating that I'm spotting a pattern. I know where I'm going to investigate first, and then I'm coming up with a strategy or some options that can help me flatten this out. So when I spot a problem, I never want to go to the board with the problem itself. I want to go with some options for solutions. And that could be after I verify that what I'm seeing is indeed what I'm seeing, of course, you always do that first. The options would be building out an inside team, outsourcing an inside team, or front loading the quarter so the sales team can build more pipeline earlier. So yeah, this is just explaining the pattern I saw. Every third month it dipped. So another thing, go ahead.
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
Okay, would you mind going back one? One of the questions I got slacked to me, so thank you. It's an anonymous question. Like what are some questions that would come about from that super sleuther that's going to be in the room whenever they see this? Because there's some like pretty aggressive dips.
Yep.
So like what type of questions would we need to be prepared for to justify why those are there?
Right. So the first question they're going to ask is whether or not the pipeline build is consistent with lead volume. So they're going to want to see whether it's a conversion problem or a volume problem. That's one of the first questions they're going to ask. And that's actually the next slide is I'm going to show you, like, that's anticipated. That's why we show both lead and pipeline volumes. So we can kind of overlay those and see, is it caused because they don't have enough leads coming in, or is it a lack of attention? So that's like question number one. Question number two is, since this is a consistent pattern, they are going to ask why it's consistently happening in the third month of the quarter. If I know that these are full cycle sellers and I don't have an inside sales team and I push on this, I'm going to get an answer back that says, look, we can't have them focused on lead follow-up in the third month of the quarter because we need them focused on closing new logos. I know that as somebody who's been in B2B for a really long time, but the question I would go ask the sales team is, hey, I'm noticing this is inconsistent with our lead build, which is the next chart I'm going to show. So on the bottom is the lead volume at the same time. And this is drastically going up. And you see this pipeline build, there's heavy dips, even though that volume is consistently going up. So this creates even more questions, but I do want to illustrate that we're looking at leading indicators to see if it's caused by some kind of weirdness happening in marketing, or if it's truly a behavioral issue on the sales side. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's super helpful. Thank you. Yeah, because it's just I've been in these situations before with community, and I remember my first time presenting to a CEO at Clary, and I was like, oh my gosh, I was so underwhelmed. I had no idea what I needed to show, and I'm showing growth, but I didn't know what it meant necessarily. And so I know we've got a lot of like newer demand gen folks or folks who are moving into a leadership role where they have to present. And so it's kind of like, how do you make sense of what that looks like? So I think that chart was so incredibly helpful because it's so much more than, oh, well, sales isn't supporting this every third month, but instead it's like, here's the actions that need to take. I'm curious, that has to be a hard conversation sometimes. And coming from sales, I know we're slightly dense sometimes. So I'm curious, like, what does that conversation usually look like? Because surely it's not as easy as just saying, hey, your sales team is dropping the ball the last month of the quarter.
Oh, absolutely not. Yeah, no, you can't do it that way. So keep in mind, every time you point a finger, there's three pointing back at you. So what I do is I look at the leading indicators first before I show this to anybody. And you can see this lead volume is spiking up really aggressively and pipeline's pretty flat. So the first things I'm going to be checking are, what is my mix? What kind of leads are coming in? What are the conversion rates look like? How has the quality changed? Are we gating them appropriately? Are we elevating the leads that tend to convert the most and hiding the rest? Like, there's a lot of things I'm going to do on the marketing side of the house when I see these two in combination, because I'm going to say, oh crap, conversion rates are going way down. So did I give them too much volume to handle? Did I decrease the quality of those leads? And did I do everything I need to do to make sure that the offer is in alignment with what our product actually does? Am I attracting the right personas? Am I in the right ICP? So all of that is interrogation that's going to take place first on the marketing side of the house. Once I'm positive I have all of my ducks in a row, and in this case, these aren't the real numbers, but it's a situation that I've seen before. What I ended up doing is noticed with the big decline in conversion, I ended up gating leads to only super high ICP fit or super high intent. So really high converting demo requests, form fills, those sorts of things went through. Plus maybe a little bit lower intent, like gated downloads with the right ICP. Then I went through and we did a messaging overhaul. So anytime we're in a downturn, the smartest thing to do is evaluate whether your key personas that your sales team normally deals with have retained buying power. So in a recession, budgets get changed, and all of a sudden the CFO is involved in more and more purchase decisions. So as a marketer, I know that I need to move up in the organization and start creating a selling and marketing strategy that speaks to those personas instead. And only once I'm confident that I have done my due diligence, then I can turn to the sales team and say, look, we need to address the overall dip in conversion rate. And here's what I've done in marketing to make this easier for your team. I'm also noticing we're consistently falling short in the third month. I know you guys have very aggressive goals and you're focused on closing business in the third month. Would you be open to bringing in an inside sales resource to just serve up meetings from those inbound leads, because we have enough volume now, and just serve up those meetings so your team spends less time on prospecting in the third month of the quarter? So it's all about positioning and understanding what they care most about. And I'm also running a lot of research and doing due diligence ahead of time with my own department.
That's super helpful. I know those conversations can be so tough, especially if it's your first time going into
Yes.
a QBR of sorts, and having to position and be like, it's not really our fault this time, And so
Yeah.
I bet that talk track has to be so incredibly helpful. So that's super helpful. Thank you.
Right. And there should never be any surprises in the boardroom. I'm going to go to the head of sales before we go present and sync on this. And I'm going to say, here's what I'm seeing. Is that consistent with what you're seeing? Here's what I think it means. Do you agree with that? So that they're not feeling defensive when I throw up this slide in front of the board.
I love that. I love that total alignment too, because I imagine not only are they not feeling defensive, but it looks like a totally unified business front. And it's hard to argue with something like that as well. So that's such a great idea.
Yeah, because chances are they're going to say, you know what, an inside resource with this lead volume, that makes a lot of sense. And if we can get more pipeline out of somebody setting those meetings for us, that's great. Okay. So like I said, the things we really need to walk away from here: don't come to the table with a problem, come to the table with a solution to the problem. So we talked about making sure our house is in order first, syncing with the leadership team that we're working with, that's responsible for something that we're seeing, and then coming up with a plan that benefits everyone. So bringing in an inside resource when you have a large inbound volume makes a ton of sense. And there's an easy way to sell that to the sales leadership team. So I'm not only going to pitch that we're getting inside salespeople, I'm also going to outline what we need to do to make the plan successful. So for example, if I'm bringing in an inside team, I'm going to outline the plan that I need to institute to get them ramped up almost immediately. So we need training materials. We need canned email responses ready to go. We need sequences. We need to lock down the sequence creating ability so people don't go rogue. And we need to warm up separate domains because I don't want them using our own domains. And I could get into a tirade on that and probably will in a future session. But basically what I'm saying is not only do I have a plan, I have a plan for the plan.
That's so important. As someone who would go rogue on email creating sequences, that's a really good idea. I think it's something that a lot of people don't do or really think about, because like, surely sellers won't touch this.
Oh my gosh. So, I mean, sales people's first instinct is, and I've seen this over and over again, is to perhaps purchase their own sequencing tool that they're comfortable with and create their own message plan based on what's worked with them before. And if you're selling a really complex product like CaliberMind with these really sales averse personas, it doesn't make sense to start there. It makes sense to start learning about what their pressures are, what they care about, what the product does ahead of time, and rely on that crutch that's provided for you.
Yeah. Well, and so much too of I feel like on the sales side of things is, well, this sounds too marketing like, it sounds too professional. We have to make it sound more like more fun, because we get taught on LinkedIn like, oh, you have to do this super specific, but it's like a lot of times sellers are just like, I don't want you to know me. I want to do the deal. Tell me what I need to know about the product. Let's go forward. So I think it's super important. But I'm still just like, I love the idea of that true alignment with the sales team and making sure that, like, especially when you go into the boardroom, that those conversations have already been had. It's not a pointing. I'm still just like, I love this.
Yeah. And I think it's really important for marketers to have respect for the sales team and incorporate their feedback. So I know from working with sales that the emails structured for them have to be extremely different. They have to be customizable, because the more personalization and research they do up front, the more likely it is we're going to have a positive response. But like you said, like, marketers tend to be verbose. Salespeople have found that not to be effective, and more white space makes it easier to read. And that's why you're seeing so many one-sentence LinkedIn posts. Is our brains are lazy and we want an easy way out. So just working really closely with the sales team and incorporating feedback on messaging and what works and what doesn't after we make sure they're actually using it and know for sure that it's not working makes a lot of sense. In Soapbox, so I am looking at a new chart now, and we're not even going, I guess we could say this is lead volume. So the big things we're going to pick out here are what the heck happened in March and August. I'm also noticing that those don't coincide with any particular month in the quarter. Like, those aren't both the third month in the quarter. One's the third month, one's the second month. So there isn't a real pattern. I'm just seeing a couple, excuse me, significant dips and then this huge spike. So what we may find out, I mean, this is what we need to research. Did we have a budget problem in March? Did we not spend appropriately? Did we not plan ahead of time and have enough online or in-person events to round out that number and make it more even? In August, what happened there as well? We were on pace, but we dipped a bit. Was it a budget issue? Did we change something? Did we change strategies? And then in September, wow, that's great. But is it tied to something like a trade show event or some kind of collaborative partnership webinar that really produced a lot of leads. We're looking for what's bad, so the dips, and why that happened so we can avoid it in the future. And we're looking for what's good so we can speak to what worked well and what we plan to repeat in the future. So again, looking for patterns trending up and to the right, looking for anomalies month 3 and month 2 of Q3. So there isn't a pattern in which month it's happening in. And then I'm going to dig in and ask questions around, wow, why was September so good? Can we repeat that on a consistent basis? Or was it kind of an anomaly because we're on a trade show schedule that just lines up with that? I mean, that's really what I had in this session. It's dense. So future sessions, I was planning on covering data storytelling, and what to present specifically at different levels. And then we could also do an offshoot on digital advertising. If people can't wait for that and would like to get a head start, we actually have a free certification program through CaliberMind where people can take these classes. If you go to the CaliberMind.com page, we have a certification program and you can actually put it on your LinkedIn profile.
Here we go. Dropped a chat, but that's not it. Here we go. Here's the link. So Martina had a great question. What level of granularity would you get to with this type of reporting? And I think it kind of depends also on like what level are you in the company as well, I would imagine.
Yeah, so if you're reporting to the board, I keep it extremely high level. I have 3 charts and that's it. We're looking at bookings, pipeline, and lead volume in that order. And then I'm speaking to all of the initiatives and things that impacted those top line numbers. So I know what, and Treveni's here listening, but I know what Treveni's been up to, my digital marketer. I know what kind of events we've been doing and can explain the background to that, but I'm keeping the data at a very high level. The reason why I'm doing that is because the more details we give, the more questions and ambiguity it creates. So if I'm going to show you a detailed breakdown of leads and their conversion rates and all of these things, you're going to get the people squinting and leaning in, and you're going to get a ton more questions. It's not that I do have that in the appendix and I can go there if I need to, but I start really high level and keep the expectation that it's going to stay high level. Now, when it comes to departmental syncs and quarterly reviews with the department, you're going to get into a lot more detail. So if I'm a digital marketer, I'm going to report how many opportunities I'm influencing, maybe how much pipeline if you have that reporting available. And then I'm going to get into some specifics about top and bottom performing, what we learned from those 2 things that we can carry forward. So it's going to be a really different meeting. So you're right, like different people are going to report at different levels, and that's perfectly okay.
I love the start at high level. I remember my first one, I was like, I felt like I needed to share everything to show all the things that I'm doing, and that could be like a self, personal insecurity of like, I want to show that I am working, I'm doing all the things. But I love that keeping it at that high level and having the resources at hand. And Martina wanted to follow up. So it sounds like it's valuable to have the backup at hand, but really only if you need to reference it or if they want to go deeper.
Yeah. So have the initiatives, in a slide, have more specifics in a slide, but chances are really good that if you set the expectation early that you're a marketer who's sharing the revenue number and you're worried about pipeline and bookings, and that's where you're going to focus, and you're going to be able to speak to how you're positively impacting that and what you're going to change going forward, the chances that you'll need those auxiliary slides are really low. So what I see with a lot of people who start with initiative reporting and set that expectation, it's really hard to get out of that mindset once you've opened that door. So like it may be kind of too late to change your strategy. You can see the appetite or test it out a bit, but I highly recommend staying away from initiative first reporting and web stats and social stats because it gives the impression that you're focused on vanity metrics and hiding something. And it's just, people are superstitious. They're weird.
Well, something happened in their life that makes them that way.
Oh, absolutely. And like really tiny itty bitty small companies, seed stage, web stats and social stats may be all they have.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
But I would implore those people to have a roadmap for how they're going to get to the core metrics that they want to report on in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, just it's so incredibly important to have that appendix, like you had mentioned. Like, I mean, I think if anything for me, to be concise and having that, because I've caught myself before of like, oh, I have to find that data. And then I waste 5 minutes looking for it. And then they think I'm completely unprepared. And nobody wants that. And that's being caught, and that's so stressful.
I experience that in operations all the time where I was asked for certain reports that were very initiative based, and then it created a slew of questions afterwards, and it took weeks to get all the follow-up done. If we can keep it at a high level and anticipate the questions and be prepared, you're going to have the board be much more confident about you as a leader.
Yeah.
It's all about building confidence and making sure that you can speak to the data, anticipate the questions, and be prepared in a way that really instills confidence.
Yeah. So whenever you prepare for this, is it, I guess I'm curious, have you written out potential questions that they may ask and be like, this is how I'm going to present this information, or like even say, I know you may be wondering about this, here's some information around it, or do you just wait for them to bring it up and still keep it fairly concise that way? Or
What I usually do is I look at all my numbers, I anticipate the questions, but then I develop a storyline to go with the data. And what is important about that is data doesn't change minds, stories do.
Yeah.
We see this in politics, we see this all over the place. So being able to anticipate the questions and then raise real issues and get people focused on where I need them to focus on is beneficial to everybody. So if they want to divert and cover something, I'm prepared to do that. But I'm going to focus on, hey, we have a lead conversion problem because we don't have an inside sales team, and I'm really concerned about this. And here's the stats. So like, I'm going to come prepared with our conversion rate was this, now it's this, and we need to get here. Like, I'm going to have the whole backstory and drive them towards my concern that I need addressed.
Yeah, I love that. And I think the storytelling, I think that's so incredibly powerful, because there's just something in a beautifully well-told story that will get you excited and be like, wow, this person knows what they're doing. I'm confident in them. I feel comfortable with them leading this charge. And I want to support this even more so because I see where this is, I see what the next chapter is going to look like. And so I just think that's absolutely amazing. So one of the questions I got was, what about presentation size? You mentioned that there's like 3 topics that you really focus on.
Yeah.
3 types of metrics that you really focus on. How long does the slide need to be? You usually do 2 charts or so. Do we want like a 15 slide deck type presentation?
No. So it's going to depend on where in your planning cycle you are. So if you're speaking to your yearly plan and you're coming up, so you're reporting Q4's results and you're going into what you're going to do throughout the year, your presentation is going to be a bit longer than what it normally is. So a normal presentation for me is 4 slides. That's a normal quarter. When I'm presenting the plan for the year, it goes up to 5 to 6. And what I'm focusing on, I have a couple charts on bookings and pipeline, a couple on leading indicators for leads and conversion rate. And then I'm going to talk lessons learned, successes, and then here are the plans by the areas that I manage. Here are our primary focus points. That's it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I love that. I really love the lessons learned aspect too. Like, I think that's huge, because then it's showing you've seen where the mistakes were made, what you're going to do differently. And I think that's all about the growth mindset. And I know any of us who have talked with executives, they love that. So
Yeah. I love that you brought up growth mindset. Oh boy, that's Mindset, the book by Carol Dweck or Dr. Carol Dweck is amazing. Read it. But um, being able, I think as marketers, especially when we're marketing product, we tend to focus on the positive and want to spin things in a very positive light. Don't do that. So we don't want to appear tone deaf because it makes us seem like we're not aware of the situation. So if
yeah,
sales miss their numbers and our lead gen numbers look great and you just focus on lead gen numbers, you're going to look foolish because we focus, like, the overall focus is whether or not we hit our bookings number. And if we missed, we all missed, and we need to acknowledge it. And then we can focus on, and here's what we're doing to make up that deficit going forward. That is a much smarter talk track than not mentioning it and being like, here's what we
yeah,
did in marketing.
yeah, and hiding it.
Yeah. Well, and we're not even hiding it. Maybe we're just, another department will cover it. Don't do
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Well, and I like that too, because then you actually get to acknowledge it.
Mm-hmm.
And then you actually get to say, and ideally, this is something you've already talked about with the other department, right?
Yep.
Because you're already having that conversation with sales, you're already having this conversation with the appropriate department. So then you're able to say, because of we saw this, we chatted with X, and now we got this solution of Y. And so because of that, we're implementing and making the appropriate changes. We'll report back on what that looks like, type of a discussion.
And the biggest mistake marketers can make is only looking at bookings and pipeline at the end of the quarter. If you are looking early on and see we're behind pace for pipeline generation, you have a shot to do something about it, react to it, and help the business. And that is a better story to tell the board than, we noticed at the end of the quarter that sucked, and now here's what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
You can actually impact it and show like a spike, and you actually did positively impact it. That's impressive.
I love that. That's amazing. Yeah. Caroline, thank you for dropping that book in the chat. That's super, super helpful. I'm excited to check it out. And it's an Amazon link, so.
Yeah, and it's audio.
Oh yeah, there you go. An audiobook. There we go.
Yeah.
That looks great. Awesome. Okay. Well, I'll give it a second. If anyone's got any other questions, feel free to Slack me, drop them in the chat, drop them in the Q&A. But this was so incredibly helpful. I mean, for me, it's helped me get a different perspective. Like I shared, my first time going into a QBR of sorts was so stressful, and I thought I got the support that I needed, but I didn't. And I remember my CEO being like, you really should talk to your manager, when it was my manager that built the presentation with me. And it turned out she had never done anything like that either. And so I was like, it was the blind leading the blind, and it was rough.
Sometimes you can only learn baptism by fire.
Right.
But if you know ahead of time, I don't know why board meetings are, I do know why board meetings are so secretive, but I don't know why people aren't better prepared for them during their career, because knowing what to expect and what they're looking for is the key to building a deck and presentation that's going to resonate.
Yeah. Yeah. I think this is so incredibly helpful. Yeah, I'm just thinking about all the things that I can do today. I have a slide deck that I just always keep updated with new information and new stats and details and campaigns and projects, activations. And I always try and keep that updated. But in my head, I'm just like, wow, I need to change some of these things. And maybe I shouldn't go as in detailed, because that is opening up for a lot of questions. And I don't know how to be as prepared for that. So this is, for me, this was incredibly helpful. I've already been getting messages about, wow, that's a great quote. This is helpful. I'm excited for the next session. So thank you everyone for your feedback. Huge thank you to Miss Camela Thompson. You're just amazing. And anytime you have something to say, I'm writing down and taking notes, because it's always so incredibly impactful. And it's amazing hearing firsthand from someone like you of what to think about, what to plan for, how to have a united front, what that looks like. And then the reading the charts, you know, the up and to the right thing, I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing, because in my head, I think, oh, that means that's a good thing. But then if you're not really looking into it, you wouldn't know. And, you know, you don't want to be blindsided. So
Right.
I'm excited. Dee said very helpful. Finally, a certification. Very excited about that.
It's a
I'll
big
drop,
education gap in the
yeah,
market. Like, we need to start sharing more about what happens so these leaders that are coming into it are just knocking it out of the park.
absolutely. I'm actually going to drop this certification in the post. So if any of you couldn't find the link in the chat, no worries. Go check out the announcements channel, and I'm going to add it into the post from today promoting this event. And we're going to be planning the next one, because this was awesome. And so, yeah, thank you so much. This was so incredibly helpful.
D+1, boards and leadership need education too. I agree.
Yeah, absolutely.
All
It's
right.
huge.
Thank you,
Awesome.
everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your day. See you in the community.